Hello everyone and welcome back to the GeekWave. This is the low budget show. It's the show so low. It has no budget. Unlike today's topic that is just giving anybody, about $200 million, you don't even need a showrunner. Just go out, make your thing, and come back with a product that gets a 60% on Rotten Tomatoes. Yeah. I was just going to initially put this in the news, just like, this is something to talk about. Disney and all their bullshit. And today, when this episode goes out, when this is live for all of you to hear, this is officially the 100th anniversary of Disney. Today marks 100 years of Disney, and they had that special come out. I don't think I'll cover the special, but, all their animated characters together in a room. That's kind of cool. I'm sure that's going to get people happy. I don't care. Warner Brothers just had their one of Teen Titans Go, and that was fine too. And it's just, I guess it's just kind of cool to see these big titans caring about their classic characters in some capacity. That's fine. But we have a couple pieces of news. Before we get into all the Marvel television, everything's falling apart stuff, there's a couple pieces of news we have to talk about, starting with a sad piece of news coming out from the comic book industry. Legendary writer and artist Keith Giffen has passed away. A phenomenal creator. Just recently, there was a movie based on one of his original creations, Jaime Reyes, of course, being one of his most, I guess, modern creations that people still talk about. Jaime kind of taking up the mantle of being, the most prominent Blue Beetle character. Of course, he worked on JLI, one of the best Justice League iterations ever. And, of course, he created Lobo. Those are some of the more noteworthy stuff. He's been in the industry for so long. One of the most influential and cool guys that have worked in this industry. Just a jokester till the end if you haven't read his final statement that was put out at the time of his death. Just hey, I told them I was sick. I just didn't want to go to New York Comic Con. Died an absolute legend. This is an influential guy who has inspired a whole generation. Keith Giffen is phenomenal. He's talented. And his work speaks for itself. And one of his works from the DC stuff in particular is just a huge sweeping well of great stuff. And I recommend checking all of it out. He's a talented guy, and he will be missed. A legacy that cannot be touched. Incredible. Whether you like Lobo or not, whether you think that Jason Momoa is going to play Lobo or not, it is amazing what he did with that character. Truly. Truly amazing. Now, we are going to be sticking a bit with the comic book side of things because this was kind of a big drop that came out of New York Comic Con. You might have heard of this actor. His name is Tom Hardy. He has starred in comic book properties like The Dark Knight Rises and Venom. Has he done another one? I don't know. He is working with Scott Snyder, and they are developing their own comic book called Arcbound. So, okay, I guess Tom Hardy's writing a comic book. He was at New York Comic Con with Snyder. They were signing shit, I guess. I don't know. But they wrote a book together, a 12-issue series that takes place in the future, where Earth is a barren wasteland, and according to the official description, the formidable corporocracy. Is that how you'd say that? Cool. Zynatech harnesses the unmatched energy of chromium to assert its dominance across the stars. The Arcbound series chronicles the journey of Kai, a resolute mediator captain tasked with maintaining Zynatech's lifeline to chromium. However, as he grapples with the morality of his role, revelations about Zynatech's dubious past thrust him into a poignant quandary: to remain loyal to the Empire or to confront the forces that molded him into a tool of oppression. What? That sounds really boring. No offense. I feel like this is every dystopian sci-fi. I think it's kind of cool that Tom Hardy's signed on to write this, but nothing about that description has me going, oh, finally, Scott Snyder's take on a dystopian future, This sounds a lot like Berserker. Do you remember that Keanu Reeves comic book where Netflix instantly bought the rights to this book just so they could have like a property to adapt for Keanu Reeves, and then nobody read the book. Well, some people read it, and then nobody read the second issue, and then they never did anything. The anime series isn't coming. That movie isn't coming. This feels like that. Do you remember when Scott Snyder signed that huge deal with Comixology and Amazon to adapt like his 8 creator-owned books, and we haven't done any of them yet? There's been no talks about them. He was in a writer's room for like The Witches, I think, for a minute, but that has never come up. So what the fuck are we doing? I'm trying to get like excited about any of this, but it's hard because I don't care, and I can't imagine this book's gonna be great. I don't know. Like, the lead character kind of looks like Tom Hardy, so it's like if they made it into a movie, Tom Hardy would obviously play the character. Or maybe Tom Hardy's just become so integrated in comic books. He's got a son, right? Tom Hardy has a kid. Maybe his kid's like, Dad, you should like write a comic book because comic books are cool. And he's like, I don't know how to write a comic book. I could probably find a guy who does, and he's a rich guy. He can get like the top comic book guy to do it, like Scott Snyder. So that's kind of cool. I don't know. It's weird. It's just so weird to me that it's being discussed. Like, okay, cool. I guess we'll see what happens. So I have one final piece of news I want to talk about. And this is from Matthew Vaughn, who has been slowly doing the rounds a little bit because we still have like the SAG-AFTRA strike and the actors can't promote the work. We have Argyle that's coming out soon. We talked about that trailer a couple weeks ago. Looks really bad. But he's been out and about talking about a couple updates for things he wants to do. So one of them is we're going to reboot Kick-Ass. And Mark Millar was on X/Twitter being like, I can't talk about it, but yes, it's going to happen. Like, okay. I think we are past the time of doing Kick-Ass. Now, here's the, like, oh my God, there's so much to unpack with this. First off, Millarworld is kind of dead at Netflix. Like, they had 2 attempts and nobody watched either of them. Jupiter's Legacy is still one of my favorite things to come out of Netflix. 2, who gives a fuck about Kick-Ass? I don't think that matters. What would get me excited, what would get me genuinely excited for any of this, right, is if this Kick-Ass, like, reboot was set to, like, launch an actual Millarworld where it's like, we're going to do everything. We're doing the Ambassadors. We're doing Nemesis. We're doing the Kingsman in the Kick-Ass universe. Because if you are not reading Big Game, I'm sure you are. Like, it's really fucking cool. Big Game is just Mark Millar taking all of his characters and putting them into one thing. Eggsy was in that, right? And then I think the Kick-Ass guy is coming back in it too. So you're just like, come on. That's what we should be doing, aiming for Big Game. But also, do we care? Is there an audience for all of these things crossing over? If the reboot of Kick-Ass like ended with like the Rise of the Beast like G.I. Joe sequence where it's like, hey, maybe we should get to know this guy. He works for the Kingsman. I'd lose my shit because at least that's like a viable thing because Matthew Vaughn likes both of these so much. Speaking of Kingsman, number 3 is potentially happening. I think they were talking about like the like prequel sequel. Remember when they did like The King's Man? And they were like, we kind of had like a story growing for like the rise of Hitler. You're like, sure you did. But we'll see if that happens. It probably won't. But The Kingsman 3 is being talked about. Taron, I guess, is still... I say he's like a big actor now, but he's really not. This is the franchise that made him. So maybe this is like a good time to come back to it and to actually attempt something with it. I don't know. I mean, I'd love to see it. I'd love to see something like that happen. But as I said before in an earlier episode of the GeekWave, does anybody care about this property? I don't think we do. I think we're kind of past the time of people truly caring about anything that happens in the Kingsman universe. But what do I know? I don't know much about the topic. Maybe everyone's in love with it. But they can't be. I know the prequel came out in like the pandemic, but I can't imagine that's actually going to be exciting. I don't know. And sorry, I just, like, a piece of news just appeared on my feed as we're wrapping up here. This seems to be true. This is very exciting. This seems to be true. This is the first time I'm seeing this. It's from the Hollywood Reporter. Gary Dauberman, James Wan's Atomic Monster, tackling live-action gargoyles for Disney Plus. What? That is a whole other conversation to get into. I guess that Kenneth Branagh rumor turned out to be false. But fuck yeah. Hell yeah. Gargoyles rocks. It's a great idea. Probably be canceled after one season, but who's to say? So, I mean, that looks to be true. I'm only seeing one report of it, but, you know, Hollywood Reporter, they are very believable. So that's okay. I trust it enough. Cool. Gargoyles. That's great. Let's take a break. When we come back, let's talk about Disney and Marvel. Ooh, what a topic. Trouble in Paradise? Question mark. Methinks the Marvel regime is dying. That's a whole other conversation for another day. The truth is, it probably is dying, but there's so much to go into that could change that. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. We're here to talk about the news that came out a couple days ago, mainly focusing on the Daredevil Born Again stuff. But this leads into a whole other conversation that I want to have, just about, like, has this experiment worked? Because I don't think it has. I don't think the experiment of Disney Plus and Marvel has worked. Maybe to some extent it worked for Star Wars, to some extent, but has it? I didn't watch Ahsoka. I also didn't watch Secret Invasion, and I haven't watched Loki. I don't really plan on watching any of those just because I'm kind of burnt out. But let's start with the stuff about Daredevil Born Again. If you remember, I think it was like 2 years ago or 1 year ago, Disney regained the rights to the Netflix characters. So like Daredevil and Punisher and Luke Cage and Jessica Jones and Iron Fist, all of them, they came back home. Those shows are no longer on Netflix. They went to the Disney Plus umbrella and they exist there. And then everyone's like, oh, so you're bringing the characters back. And then, you know, there's Daredevil in the She-Hulk show and in the Spider-Man thing. And Kingpin was in Hawkeye. Just slowly bringing these characters back to prominence. Under the, like, sole idea that they are going to be returning for a Daredevil thing. Because Daredevil is one of those characters that just works for television. You can do the courtroom drama, and you should do the courtroom drama. It's a big part of the character being this lawyer, being like a person of justice and fairness. It's a big part of his character, and you should focus on that. So that's made for television. So Daredevil Born Again gets announced like last year, 2 years ago. It gets announced right away. An 18-episode overall deal, and you're just like, yeah, I mean, I guess that makes sense. The one thing people like about the Netflix era is Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio, so bringing them back makes a lot of sense. The show was in active development. It was being created. It's being worked on actively, right? Over on Disney Plus. So there was some filming underway, which of course there should be, which is kind of cool. And then we had to stop because we had a writer's strike, and then we didn't have anything to really do. And that made me go. And like, I know there's like a bunch of other stuff that goes into that. That made me go, why did we have to stop filming? Because the writers couldn't promote anything or work on anything? Did we not have 18 scripts made for that? Okay, sure. And then SAG, of course, did it, so then we actually really had to shut down. And now that the writer's strike is over, it looks like we are slowing things down more for Daredevil. So it was announced that the writers of the show and some of the directors of the show have been let go as Marvel plans to overhaul the whole series. So all the stuff that they've shot, apparently it was like 4 episodes that they shot, or just like a few episodes. They're scrapping the entire thing. They're going back to basics. And this is like an overall deal with things going on from the WGA strike. So this is apparently a good thing for Marvel. I think this, okay, this is a good thing. This is a really good thing. If they were unhappy with the way this series was going, starting over makes sense. They have the money to do so. They have the time to do so. If you are gone for a year, people are going to miss you and you're going to feel more special. So it's a really good thing we're slowing down for a minute. I appreciate that so much. I think Charlie Cox is still supposed to be an Echo, which is supposedly coming out still. That might be completely scrapped too. I don't know. It's very interesting to think about. But this is like, finally, somebody is giving some clear direction here. Because this is a huge issue that Marvel has had with their Disney Plus stuff, is they've never found the right way to make a TV show. They've come close a couple of times, but they never did it. And now that we have the strike over and new deals were in place, new implements are coming towards like this side of things for Disney Plus and Marvel. One of the things that they talked about is an actual showrunner creating a pitch Bible, having like an actual like idea for the pilot that can lead into an overall series. Which you're like, what the fuck do you mean we didn't have proper showrunners before? That seems like the first thing you should get. The first thing you should get. And then you hear reports that there's like people on shows like Secret Invasion vying for control to do different things. Who's going to like lead this episode? We don't really have like an actual identity made up. No more spending $150 million for 6 episodes with no direction. What the fuck are you talking about, Disney? Why were you letting this happen? That's crazy. I planned my weeks in advance for how much money I have, and you're just casually throwing away $150 million on stuff that is not being seen by many people? That's crazy to me. That is so crazy. Like, what are you doing with that money? Why do you not have proper showrunners? That is so weird. And then there's like, the Secret Invasion thing might be the most noticeable. Of course, there are some clear examples of people working on projects and not working on projects. There's been rumors that Jeremy Slater kind of like stepped away from Moon Knight like halfway through the show. You can definitely feel the ones where we were working through COVID and we can never escape that. Actually, pretty much all of these productions have been taking place through COVID, which is kind of weird to think about, isn't it? And because of that, there's just like a less, I guess, demand to have like an actual Bible made for what your show is supposed to be. I don't know. Maybe the fucking miniseries thing isn't working. Because that's their other point too. Real showrunners, no more wasting money. We're going to format it like TV. It's insane that this has to be said. It is insane that this is something that needs to be talked about for Marvel. You are the most successful studio, maybe in the history of film, and you can't figure out how to do television? A format that's been around since the 50s? And you were like, we're going to change the format. It's been working for 70 years. It's been happening for 70 years. What makes you think you can fix that or make it better or do something different? It's this whole problem with streaming, and I don't want to get into like the downpour of everything wrong with streaming services, but just the basic idea that you think you can change how television has worked. You had the ability and you fucked it up every time. You have screwed up every chance you get to actually try to make something different for television. Releasing all the episodes at once. Well, then everybody finishes in a day. Nobody's talking about it. There's no hype for it. The pressure to watch it all and binge it destroys any chance of creative flow. So now we release things weekly. Every single one of these things is doing it weekly now. It's insane. That's just a thing that television is. Now you could get tiers that have ads in them. Well, of course you can. Because if you're not getting any new subscribers, of course the fucking prices are going to rise up. It's so infuriating that like these streaming services had like the audacity to say we're the future, but have fundamentally fallen back into the old habits of television. We have ads again. We have episodes releasing weekly. We're not special anymore. So what's the point of any of this? The experiment has clearly failed, and it's failed almost monumentally in terms of Marvel. I say this as somebody who has been reading Marvel comics for most of his life. I say this as somebody who has liked most of the Marvel movies. Am I critical of them? Of course. I still really enjoy what we can do with these characters and experiencing something fun. You have shown me you can't make television. There are two examples in the Marvel comics, there are two examples, I should say, not in the Marvel comics, in the Disney Plus array of Marvel content that actually feel like you had an idea in place that had an ending and something to say. Those two shows are WandaVision and She-Hulk Attorney at Law. Coincidentally, they're my two favorite things Marvel has ever produced because they feel like real television. They are 9 episodes each. They are, emulating, parodying on some extent what real television is. WandaVision is doing the tropes of classic sitcoms. We're doing a procedural courtroom case with She-Hulk. Sometimes the Marvel stuff gets thrown in, but they work the best out of any of the shows because they're doing television. And you know what worries me a lot? Is that the thing with Daredevil Born Again was they were doing the procedural stuff and they got worried that it's not too normal. Apparently, get this, folks, this is fucking insane. Apparently, Daredevil didn't appear in costume until episode 4. You mean the thing that happens in every one of these shows? Your characters don't get their costume till the last episode. Hawkeye didn't get it till the last episode. Moon Knight's a different example, but it's not really him getting a costume. She-Hulk got hers in the last episode. Miss Marvel got hers in the last episode. Wanda got a new look in the last episode. Captain America got one in the last episode. So don't tell me waiting that long for a costume is bad. That's what you've been doing this whole time. This whole time. It's crazy. It's crazy. I'm so blown away by these choices. And I will give them credit. It's very interesting that they learned their lesson. Because you could see them doubling down and being like, no, more miniseries. The fact that Loki got a season 2 is impressive. Does it feel like it's getting a season 2 solely because we need to set up Kang in a different way? Yes. But it's still impressive that show made it to a season 2. Because every other one has been billed as a miniseries, which isn't the case anymore. There was a time when miniseries were really important and prominent, and I think the death of that came with the ending of, Big Little Lies. Because when that's done, who cares? Everything nowadays is adapting a book into a limited series, and it's not that exciting anymore. And you have comic books which are just serialized characters. They go on forever. They're not supposed to be done in 6 episodes. They're supposed to go on for seasons. So one of the new things that MCU wants to do is adapt these characters for more seasons. Yeah, good, because clearly you're having a disconnect with the characters appearing on screen and in the movies, right? You have your television characters, you have your movie ones. We have hardly seen any crossover yet. Kamala's coming to the Marvels. That's the only one really confirmed aside from Captain America, but that's a brand that is made for movies. It's very weird. All of this is very weird, and it doesn't bode well for how this company has made it this far. I'm just amazed that they're learning the lesson. And that's the other thing too that I think has become abundantly clear is that there was really no trajectory for this phase or for this universe. And I think, and I hate to say it, I think it is time to reboot. Now that we got the X-Men and Fantastic Four and we can work out deals with Spider-Man, we should reboot. I say that because, the Ultimate Universe is rebooting soon too, and I just think it'd be better to have dueling pianos where we're seeing the start of the new DCU of Superman Legacy. I don't want to see the rise of this new universe with the end of another one, because I can't hold on to both of those and care. I think the time of the cinematic universe is dying, and if we could just have these characters function as television characters, and we could just experience them for 4 seasons, 5 seasons, and maybe they'd cross over like the CW Arrowverse did, which is almost the perfect example of how you do this. Not the Netflix model of doing like they all do their thing and then 8-episode Defenders. No, we could have like crossovers. Let's take the characters we have currently actively developing for television. You could have a Daredevil, Moon Knight, Hawkeye, She-Hulk crossover, and in one of those episodes for each of those shows, it could be like Shadowland Part 1, Shadowland Part 2, right? We could do that kind of thing, which might work better for people wanting to follow the story. I don't know. I think them learning that TV is successful is a very important lesson that is going to be learned, and it makes you wonder what's going to happen next. So there have been some reports, they're pretty much rumors at this point, that shows like Wonder Man, which has not been officially announced yet, same with Vision Quest, which has not been officially announced yet. Those are the ones of Yahya Abdul-Mateen doing the Simon Williams, which is like, yep, that's a good idea for Wonder Man, and Paul Bettany's Vision, whatever. It's said that those have been scrapped. Hard to say. I don't think anything has been filmed or created for Vision Quest. I can't imagine them scrapping what Wonder Man was, because that one kind of felt like it was going to be like a standard television show, which gave me hope. But hey, maybe it's the perfect time to rework that one too. I don't think anybody's going to be upset if we slowly start to just like not make these for a minute. We have enough coming out that will satisfy. I mean, look at Marvel's upcoming schedule. We're in the midst of Loki, then it's the Marvels, then it would be Echo, which Echo has reportedly had its own problems to deal with, which is so funny to think about. Then I guess it would be Deadpool 3. And they still think they're making that release date for Deadpool 3. They still think they're making that release date for Deadpool 3. I don't believe it. I don't buy it. And then it would be Captain America, New World, or Brave New World. What's it called? Captain America, The World Saga. Sure. Somewhere in there, What If Season 2, which is whatever. And then Agatha. Darkness Diaries. Diary of Darkhold Diaries? What's it called now? That's weird that show has had 5 different titles practically, and nobody cares. How does that show have so many freaking titles? It makes no sense. And, I mean, if you're releasing an Echo TV show and an Agatha Harkness TV show, I think you've done something wrong. Like, no offense, but those are not 2 characters where I'm like, oh yes, finally, their story will be told. I'll be surprised if we see Echo. I honestly will. I can't imagine that's one anybody's really, like, championing. The one that did make sense was Ironheart, and they have filmed enough of that, and they've just been kind of, like, holding on to it, I guess, waiting till they do that Armor Wars movie, which will never happen. It's so weird that we live in this era where Marvel keeps announcing shit and none of it's getting anywhere. It's crazy and it's dumb. But let's talk. Okay, I do want to talk about like the experiment that was Marvel doing television, if you can call it television. Because from this report, and yes, a lot of this has to do with like the COVID problems, with the new deals in place for the WGA, where finally like we can actually have a showrunner and have people leading a project, which is insane. They didn't have that before. I want to talk about like the actual, like the success of what this was. Because to me, and maybe some other people will disagree, I think this has been a very apparent failure. And I say that because I haven't watched the past 2 shows. I have had no desire to watch the past 2 shows. They came out swinging so early with the amount of content they had in the first year. They started with WandaVision. Phenomenal. WandaVision, the only time a MCU thing made me like feel anything deep, where I'm like, wow, you actually had something to say on a surface level about somebody's grief. Like, that's really cool. That to me is the success. Falcon and the Winter Soldier has a lot of issues, and you can feel the COVID of those issues. It's one of the better looking shows of the bunch, but it's a bad script from pretty much from the beginning that just sets up something else so it doesn't really exist on its own. What If was whatever. I think people like that. I didn't really care for it. And then Loki was a show where I think that is the most successful one of the six episodes, because there was a clear vision there was a clear direction there was a tone and a setting and an atmosphere and a vibe that we wanted to portray with Loki. We wanted to do a Doctor Who thing. That's what they did. I really appreciate that. While the show didn't particularly land for me, it is pretty cool that Loki managed to carve its own place in this universe. That's exciting. And then it was Hawkeye. And Hawkeye, in my humble opinion, is the worst one that they've made. Hawkeye is edited poorly. Hawkeye is poorly paced. It is poorly written. Nobody seems to be having any shred of fun. They, blue-balled us so long with the idea of the Fraction and Aja run that it's actually infuriating that they did that. Do not emulate that story if you're not going to do it. Don't do that. And the entire time, it's just setting up to showing you Vincent D'Onofrio. That's not a real show. That sucks. I've never seen Jeremy Renner more bored in his life, and he is not an actor who looks like he enjoys anything. That is insane. And then in the next year, there was Moon Knight. And I'm sure you are all aware, Moon Knight is my favorite character in Marvel Comics, my favorite character in comics, period. I love the character. I have loved Moon Knight for so long. I have done countless videos talking about Moon Knight on this channel. I will continue to talk about Moon Knight forever. The show was so weird. Such a mixed bag of ideas. And I've talked about it endlessly. Overall, stepping aside from it for about a year and 18 months now, it is a failure to me. The core concept of the character feels like it was mishandled. The use of the power and the avatar itself was handled very bad. The story felt like it was all over the place, and the giant end battle was very lame. When Kevin Feige is standing in a room and telling you it's the bloodiest show we've ever did, look at this poster where there's blood on his hands, and then we cut away from the violence every single time, you failed epically as a show. I love Moon Knight to no end. It is my favorite character. I love that character. It is a monumental failure that this show didn't do anything that invokes the character aside from aesthetic-wise, and they CGI'd the suit over top of the practical suit. It's insane. I say that. It did give us Layla El Foyle, who's my favorite new addition that they are never going to use again. God forbid we have something nice. Diving into the Egyptian themes works. It's fine to do that, but that has never been the defining characteristic of the character. He's in his own world with the voice of an Egyptian god in his head. Making him just a piece in the puzzle of the Egyptian lore has never been what that character is about. And that feels very weird, and I don't really love that. But again, Oscar Isaac is a good choice for that character if they wrote it in a different way. And they didn't, whatever. That makes me sad to no end. It really does, because I love Moon Knight. I love that character. I wish that was better. And then we had Miss Marvel, which was fun and almost invoked something good. If we had 13 episodes of that show, I'd be a lot happier than just the rushed ending of that one. That was whatever. Was there something else in between? I don't think there was. Then we had She-Hulk, which is the greatest success. She-Hulk is my favorite thing the MCU has produced. I think it's the most fun. It is the most flavorful. It looks the best. It is well written. The entire final act of that show is She-Hulk coming to talk to Kevin Feige, being like, don't make me like the other shows! I am not like them! The fact that they accomplished that effectively is really cool, and something we may never do again with that character. And Tatiana just played it so well, and everyone had fun, and it looked really fun and cool. And then Werewolf by Night happened, and that was fun. I liked that a lot. And then we had the holiday special I didn't watch either. Kevin Bacon, funny, I get it. And then we had Secret Invasion, which I didn't watch. Nobody liked it. Loki's going on right now. It's fine, whatever. Yeah, those are all the things that came out, and we have to ask the question, did it work? It doesn't really seem like it did. You know, 6 episodes isn't enough time to tell like the story of these characters. And you've just made longer movies, so nothing is paced properly, nothing is edited properly, and you just set up the next thing, and the next thing is yet to happen because we are on strikes and we are through COVID. Nothing really feels real. Nothing feels like it is earned. It's kind of weird that we made it this far. Truly it is. I don't think there's a success in any of this. But, people still watch them, I guess. The ratings are fine. I don't think they're strong for a Secret Invasion. But maybe taking a step back is the right thing to do. Release Echo, release Agatha. Don't do anything for a minute and figure your shit out. If we do a second season of Hawkeye or Moon Knight or Miss Marvel, do 10 episodes. Do 13 episodes. Do something that makes it longer. Try harder. God. Even the fucking Superman and Lois gets to 13 every time. And it feels like a real show. So why don't you feel like a real show? Seeing that there was a problem with Daredevil is a really cool thing. Because that's a character that you'd feel like they'd want to pump out quick. But actually stopping to fix things, I'm sure everyone feels good. Vincent D'Onofrio has said this is just part of the process. He's getting paid no matter what. I'm sure that's in a clause for him somewhere. No matter what happens, he gets his money. So fixing this stuff is good because so far your experiment has failed. It has not worked. She-Hulk and WandaVision being they're like standouts because they're playing with a television format. It's kind of fun. It's surprising that they worked, but it failed. Try harder. Do something new. This is a good sign. Learning your lesson is a good sign because Disney has the potential and the probability not to learn their lesson. They could easily fall victim to we don't need to grow or change. But them learning is impressive. Maybe Star Wars will do the same. Ahsoka just kind of ended, What are we doing with these event television anymore? It's hard to like anything. I don't know. Even something like Peacemaker, which was 8 episodes, it felt like a real show because the episodes ended and they had stories that they told, It's weird, but the experiment has failed. Disney is learning their lesson. Marvel is learning their lesson. There is a future to be had here. But at the end of the day, if Secret Wars or whatever, is it Secret Wars? Yeah, if that was the last one, it's fine by me. It's fine by me. But what do you think? Did the Marvel stuff work for you? Has it worked for you this far? I'm glad we are seeing some change because it gives me hope that they can learn. What did they have to learn? Oh, be an actual TV studio. Seems like a lesson you should have already known, but whatever. As long as they learn the lesson in the end, that's all that matters. Now, thank you all for watching this episode of the GeekWave. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. As always, you can check me out on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. And as always, I will catch you in the next one. Have fun. Stay safe. Good luck.